Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to Rebel, Reject, Create, the video podcast YouTube series with highly creative people. And today I'm joined by Cliff Goldmacher, who is a Grammy-recognized #1 hit songwriter, and an author, and a trainer, and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff. So welcome, Cliff. Nice to have you here.
Thank you, David. It's an honor to be here.
All right, good. I pronounced your surname in quite a Dutch way. Is that how you do it?
That actually gives it a little bit of authenticity. In the United States, we say Goldmacher, but I
Okay.
like the way you did it.
Okay, good, good. Before we get into some of the other specific details I want to ask you about, I've got to ask you this question first. How do you write a #1 hit song?
Well, first of all, the short answer is you don't know that you're doing it while you're doing it. I've written over 1,000 songs, and this was one of those songs that I wrote with a friend of mine and a collaborator, and we felt good about the song, but I felt good about a lot of the songs I've written. It was just the perfect confluence of right song for the right artist at the right time with the right record company behind it, and
Right. Okay.
but I fairly strongly believe that anyone who claims they can tell whether a song is a hit or not is lying.
I, based on my experience with this kind of thing, I would tend to agree.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, obviously, that was a bit of a frivolous question, but if you look at the processes that you follow when
Mhm.
you are songwriting, is there anything that jumps out like this is how I do this?
Oh, sure. I mean, when I first started writing songs, the answer was absolutely no. You just sort of you wait for the planets to align and something happens or it doesn't. But the more that I wrote and the more that I examined the process of writing songs, there is absolutely a general sort of arc to the creative process. The bulk of what I do is collaborating with artists for their projects. So most writing sessions begin with sometimes it's an artist I know, sometimes it's an artist I don't. We'll sit down and chat for about 20 minutes, get to know each other a little bit. And usually in that 20 minutes is the grain of the idea. If you're open to paying attention to that sort of thing. That's what happened with our #1 song. We were just chatting, and something in the discussion led us to explore an avenue. So, first and foremost, I would say just be aware that everything is fodder for the creative process.
Mm.
Then, one of the things I've learned over time, and you're talking to an inveterate control freak, I've learned how important it is to let go. So the creative process is only strangled by trying to manage it closely. So a big part of my process is just continually moving forward with whatever. I've heard the expression and I love it: first thought, best thought.
Ah,
Whatever pops into your head, go with that. Don't start to refine yet. Get your arms around the process. I will write an entire song before I stop, take a deep breath, and say, all right, what was I trying to say? Did I say it well? And did I say it in the most concise and moving way? If I did, then I got lucky that day. And if I didn't, that's when the editor kicks in. So I've learned to relax and stay in that flow state early on because I think that's where the real gems are. And this is from the perspective of someone who used to agonize for hours over whether to use an and or a but in a line of a lyric, which
right.
will make everyone insane, including yourself. So I've learned to let go. I've learned to let the process run its course and then edit after the fact. And I've also learned that pride of authorship is a very, very bad idea.
Okay.
So, so when I am collaborating with someone, especially if that person is an artist whom I am hoping will release the song, it doesn't matter what I think at the end. If I write a song with this person and I think it's great and they don't like it, then the song just sits there. I'm not an artist. So for me, it became very important to understand that you're going to ideas, not to be facetious or flip about this, but ideas are a dime a dozen. So if you throw something out there and your collaborator doesn't care for it, move on. Don't agonize over that. So
Mm.
trust that there is abundance in creativity and don't get too attached to a single idea and keep moving forward, and ultimately you'll end up in a place where you've written something that hopefully the artist will feel good about and that you'll also be proud of.
Right, right. Now, what you're up to now is writing books and talking to business people about
Mhm.
learning lessons from creativity.
Right.
Are you teaching them this kind of stuff? Where's the link between what goes on in innovation and what you're just talking about?
So much of the innovative process is the creative process.
Yeah.
And so much of the creative process is the songwriting process. So what I've basically done is use songwriting as a way into the creative process. So I think for most business people, the idea of writing a song is sort of like doing a magic trick. But the moment you start to break it down and say to them, look, here's how the verse of a song works. Here's how the chorus works. Here's how metaphor relates to your idea, but in a much more emotional and compelling way that you will remember. And then I guide them through the process because, unlike these folks who have most likely never ever written a song, I've done it countless times and I can walk them through that process. Early on, it helps to have sort of a, for lack of a better way to put it, a spirit guide taking you through the process. But in time, everything that I impart to these teams, they can then do on their own. And that was what the book was about for me. It was about codifying this process so that someone who reads the book who doesn't have me in front of them can apply those same rules to creativity and innovation.
Because creativity is not actually a magic trick.
It is absolutely not. And we all have the ability to be creative.
Right, right. So, in the lead up to one of these kinds of sessions, if you're busy, I don't know, speaking to a team leader or whoever's talking to you about coming on board to do something, and you need to persuade them that this is the real deal, what one thing can you say to a person like that that'll help them immediately understand, okay, yeah, I can do that. That's never thought of it like that.
Well, I think at this point, it is the weight of the fact that I've been doing this for a long time and the clients that I have worked with are, I've got social proof. In other words, I've got people willing to weigh in and say that this was worthwhile in large organizations. But above and beyond that, I think the thing that helps people sort of understand is that I don't want them to think that I am giving them the musical equivalent of a trust fall. This is not just a team building exercise. It does do that, but it is a deep dive into creativity. So if I can articulate to them, and this is what I do, the value of the creative process in everything that you touch as a business team, as a business, as an individual in a corporation, then it becomes easier for them to imagine exploring this. And I also make it clear that there is an inherent fear of not only the creative process, but specifically music and introducing music into the workplace. I think that feels a little bit unnerving to some people. So I make it clear that this is a process that has smaller pieces that are broken down that apply to the bigger picture of creativity. And that seems to put people's minds at ease.
All right. I want to pick up on the first part of what you just said there. That there's this fear around the idea of the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there, in your opinion? I mean, particularly in a business context here.
So there are a couple of things, and you and I had a brief conversation about this a while back, and this was something that surprised me a lot, which was I've been in the songwriting world for over 30 years. So I don't go into a session and think, I hope my co-writer doesn't think I'm being foolish. But I can promise you that people in a business context worry about that.
Yeah.
And so that was a shock to me at first. It just didn't occur to me that could be a stumbling block. But there is a deep-seated fear of appearing foolish in front of your peers in a work context. So I am very, very careful in this process to make sure that nobody is hung out to dry, no one is singled out. This is very much a group exercise. And it becomes much easier to get through that once people get past this idea that they are going to be made to look foolish in front of their peers.
Right, right. What's that all about, this appearing foolish? I mean, what are they going to do that potentially is going to make them appear foolish?
It's a good question. I think if they had to articulate it, it would be, I am in a position of authority in my company. You are now asking me to do something that I am not good at.
Right.
I don't want to look like a beginner when people are relying on me to lead. And the reality is that, and there are countless studies about this, being willing to make yourself vulnerable and to have a beginner's mind in front of your team is critical to trust and critical to growth.
Yeah. And I mean, apart from that, which is actually an incredibly good point, I must remember that. Good thing we're recording this.
Mm.
Is that as a leader, as someone in business, they are solving problems every day anyway. And how do
Yes.
they do that? That's
Yeah,
creativity, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
It is if it's working.
Well, I mean, as you said, there's no shortage of ideas in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's no guarantee of the limits of creativity. It's what you do with it that counts, isn't
Mm-hmm.
it?
That's right.
Right. So, how many people have taken up songwriting as a result of your business interventions?
So what's interesting is that every once in a while I'll have what I refer to as a ringer in one of my workshops, someone who has already explored songwriting and is interested in the process. I don't know if any of these folks have become songwriters after the process, but I know that at the very least I have given them a set of tools to examine their issues. That I love the Maslow quote: if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail.
Yeah.
So at the very least, what I have given these folks is another tool, another way to examine a problem so that every answer doesn't look like a nail.
Right. Right. Yeah. Cool. Hey, if you're watching this video and enjoying yourself, please don't forget to hit the like button. And if you're really enjoying it, hit the subscribe button, because this is one of just a series of these kinds of conversations. And if you've got any questions for Cliff, please use the comments section to type up your answer. He and I will both be checking in to respond to those. And we'll get back to you with some scintillating insights. But back to the matter at hand.
Mm.
When did you well, two questions. When did you realize that you were possibly more creative than the person sitting next to you? And when did you decide that this was what you were going to do? And how did that actually happen?
So as far as being more creative than the person next to me, that's a very interesting thing. I don't think that there was ever a moment where I thought to myself, I'm more creative than the average person. I had taken piano lessons as a kid, got to school, got to college, and decided that I would study political science, not an overly necessarily creative career choice. I thought I would be an attorney. So I was on a straight and narrow path, but I began writing songs as a result of learning to play guitar in college. And there was something in that moment of starting to write songs and starting to play guitar that, maybe in answer to your initial question, made me feel like there was some untapped creativity that I wanted to explore. I mean, I had played piano at this point for 10 years and never really had the urge to write a song. But learning to play guitar may have unlocked a little bit of that latent creativity, and writing songs was really moving to me. And it was really something that not only was I enjoying the process, but I was enjoying connecting with people through songs. And so when I graduated from school, I took a year off before getting ready to go to law school. I had already taken the law school entrance exam. And in that year, I found a gig in a little cafe, and I played 6 nights a week. And at the end of that year, I thought, I don't think I'm going to go to law school. The calculus that I did was, if I go to law school now, I will not end up coming back to music. But if I try music and that doesn't work, it's not like law school is going away. That will always be there.
Right.
Of course, that was 32 years ago. So far, so good.
Yeah, yeah. I really like what you said there about there being a catalyst. It wasn't until you picked up the guitar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that something you've noticed with people you speak to, that it's there, it's always been there, but suddenly something happens, a new skill is acquired or a new perspective attained, and then this stuff kicks off?
It's a great question. I am hoping in my heart of hearts that I am that catalyst for people who are not conditioned to thinking of themselves as creative. So there's this sort of focus on productivity in the business world. And usually people see productivity and creativity as diametrically opposed. I clearly don't believe that. I know that you don't. And so for me, being able to show people that creativity is in some ways critical to productivity is my way of attempting to be that catalyst. For me, I just lucked into the guitar. But I'm hoping that by offering these experiences for businesses, I'll be that catalyst that shows people, oh, I am in fact creative. I just need to examine it more closely.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a huge piece of cognitive dissonance for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what underpins a successful business? Well, IP, intellectual property. Where does that come from? Oh, ideas. Oh, how do you get ideas? Oh, you're creative. Oh, wait a second.
Yeah. Right.
And yet, this is a very common judgment that creativity has no place in business because it's not productive, because it's not measurable, because it has no value.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things I think about a lot is even if everyone who ends up going through my workshop doesn't say, I want to your point, write songs,
Yeah.
at the very least, what it will do is create an appreciation of creativity and create a culture that will respect that and see that is something to be nurtured.
Right. And how do you address those culture issues? Because I think that fear of looking foolish, and I mean, all right, that can be a personality/ego issue, but it can also be a very real experiential issue based on what you see happening every day in your work environment.
Right. I mean, the only thing that I can do is to create an environment while I am there that feels, to use a current term, psychologically safe, so that they feel like they're willing to take risks in an environment where people are encouraging each other. And what I have found, not to be too Pollyanna about it, but what I have found is that most people are incredibly encouraging of one another in that context. It's, as a friend of mine used to say about songwriting, it's not air conditioner repair school. It's supposed to be fun. And so as people are getting involved in the process, they're enjoying themselves. And when you're enjoying yourself, it's easier to be supportive. And the fear eventually goes by the wayside. At least that is my goal. And in my experience so far over the past 7 years, that has been the result.
Right. So the question I get asked a lot is, how do you manage to stay creative all the time? As if it's like a well or something that's going to run dry. But when I think about that, I realize that I do a whole bunch of stuff to make sure that I stay creative. What do you do?
I do a couple of things, and I've been doing this now for decades. Every morning, as the result of a book called The Artist's Way, every morning I will write in a journal, first thing. That's one thing. Since I'm writing fewer songs these days and doing more work with businesses, in order to keep myself, to your point, creative, I will write a haiku every morning. It's just a way for me to give a little nod to my creative self, keep that flame burning, sort of keep the pilot light lit. So those sorts of things are a big part of how I just, at the very least, stay connected to my creative self.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Cliff, one last thing. Someone stumbles across you on the pavement one day and says, oh my goodness me, look at that, it's Cliff Goldmacher.
I hope I'm not lying down.
Not to trip over you. And then you're so creative, you write all these songs. I would really like to be more creative. What can I do? What one thing can I change in my life that'll make me more capable of creative expression? What do you say?
That's a great question. I think so much of it comes down to the willingness to believe that you are. I know that sounds overly simplistic, but there is less than a physical barrier, there is a conceptual barrier to being creative, which is if you tell yourself you're not creative, okay, you're not creative. If you're willing to, at the very least, entertain the possibility that maybe you were more creative as a child and you've let it lie fallow for a long time, at least you're willing to acknowledge that it's in there somewhere. And then if you're willing to do that, then I would recommend starting with a book like The Artist's Way, which just explores the creative process in a way that somebody who is more intellectual or more business-minded can say, well, I can read a book. I'll start there.
We'll start there. Cliff, thank you, man. It's been awesome talking to you.
Truly my pleasure, David. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody watching this particular video. Again, please, if you've enjoyed the conversation, don't hesitate to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions, just pop them into the comments underneath this video and Cliff and I will do our best to respond. and answer your questions. And if you know someone who's highly creative and does something else interesting as well on the side, drop me a line. I'd be very keen to speak to them. And if you're one of those people, of course, tell me all about yourself too. So thank you for listening and watching Rebel, Reject, Create, and see you next time.